Hello everyone and welcome once again to The View from the Midwest. It's time for another look at the NHL Central Division as we do our weekly Bleedin' Blue Division recap. Let's get started, and as we'll always do, we'll do it from the top with the Dallas Stars. The Dallas Stars are in the number one spot in the Central Division, and they had a 2-1 record this week, but they picked up some big wins against some powerful opponents who are all vying for important playoff positioning, and I encourage everyone to try to say that a couple times. They knocked off the Chicago Blackhawks on Tuesday in Chicago by a score of 6-2. They surprisingly lost 3-1 in Thursday in Arizona, but then they bounced back with a 4-2 win on Saturday in San Jose. The Chicago Blackhawks are currently in third place in the division. They continued their poor run of form to start the week, as I mentioned, with that 6-2 loss to the Dallas Stars. However, the weekend was much more kind. They had a bit of a mini Western Canadian road trip, but they won both games, coming with a 4-1 victory over the Flames on Saturday, and then Sunday saw them defeat the Vancouver Canucks 3-2, including 2 third-period goals to really get them back into that game and obviously pick up the win and try to keep pace with the Blues and Stars, who they currently trail by 4 points. The Nashville Predators kept their hot streak going by going 3-0 on the week. They took down some pretty impressive opponents as well. Monday saw them beat the LA Kings, and then they took down the Vancouver Canucks by scores of 5-2 and 3-2 respectively. And then that Vancouver game was on Thursday, and then Columbus was a 5-1 victory on Saturday. The Minnesota Wild also kept their hot streak going as they also finished the week 3-0. They also took down the Kings, which seemed to be kind of a pattern with some of these Central Division teams this week. The LA Kings seemed to manage to take down some of the Central Division teams last week, but those teams, not necessarily the same teams, but Central Division opponents, got a little bit of revenge. So as I mentioned, they also beat the Kings, similarly to Nashville. They won 2-1 on Tuesday, then took down the Flames 6-2 on Thursday, then went on the road and picked up a big divisional win over the Colorado Avalanche by the final score of 4-0, really kind of solidifying themselves in that last wild card spot, kind of giving them a bit of an edge right now on what's going on there in the playoff race. It's going to be interesting. That one's going to come down to the wire. But there are some teams that are kind of creeping up, and everybody kind of needs to be careful with the last few weeks of the season. Wrapping up things, Colorado had a very sour week. As I mentioned, they only had 2 games this week, and unfortunately for them, they lost them both. They had a 4-2 loss to Philadelphia at home on Thursday, and then Saturday, I obviously mentioned that loss to the Minnesota Wild, which really cost them possible playoff positioning. Rounding things out, the Winnipeg Jets went 2-1 this week. They won on home ice on Tuesday and Thursday by taking down the Canucks and the Kings by scores of 2-0 and 4-1. Then they lost to the Buffalo Sabres on Saturday. So that wraps up our look at the games themselves. Let's take a quick look at the standings before we sign off for the week. The Dallas Stars remain in first place in a tie, but they have the tiebreaker due to ROW. The Dallas Stars are currently 45-22-9. The Blues have the exact same record, same points. Both the teams have 99 points. The Chicago Blackhawks are 45-25-7 for 95 points. 91 points for the Nashville Predators with a record of 13. The Minnesota Wild trailed them. They are 37-28-11 for 85 points. Still an outside shot of sneaking into that third guaranteed playoff spot. But the Chicago Blackhawks are starting to pick up a little bit more steam to try to push them out and keep them as a wild card team. The Minnesota Wild right now are 37-28-11 for 85 points. Trailing them are the Colorado Avalanche, and they're actually on the outside looking in right now as they have 80 points with a record of 33-4. The Jets obviously rounding out the bottom of the division, 31-38-6 for 68 points. Looking at some of the games this week, as we have some really interesting interdivisional matchups. Dallas is going to play Nashville tonight. That's Monday night for anybody who's watching after Monday. Chicago takes on Minnesota in the state of hockey on Tuesday. The Blues take on the Avalanche twice this week. One coming on Tuesday, once on Sunday, with a game against Boston sandwiched in between there. Nashville has back-to-back games facing Colorado tonight, and then Dallas on Tuesday. So there's a lot of games going on within the division, a lot of jockeying going on just in general, and it's going to be really interesting. We're coming down towards the end of the season. We have this week, and then one more week after that, and then the playoffs start after that. So playoff positioning is going to be all key, I think. A lot of times in hockey, home ice doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot. It might not this year, but I think a lot of these teams would be so much more comfortable if they can start playing on home ice. The Blues against the Blackhawks aren't really going to care where they're playing that because it's almost a de facto home game, given the fact that the fan split tends to be about 70-30, 60-40, but that's still a lot of red in the stands. Some of the other teams, St. Louis, they want to get into that top spot. They'll say that they don't. They either want Nashville to sneak in or they want to get to that top spot and play one of the wild card teams. Because I think St. Louis needs to get over that Chicago hump to get to that promised land. But ultimately, in the first round, I think in the back of some of the St. Louis players' minds, they would much rather not have to play the Chicago Blackhawks. But it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, because if you don't play them in the first round, then all of a sudden maybe if you face them in the next round, they've already won a playoff series, obviously. So then they've caught some fire and they're getting some momentum rolling, and do you want to face them in that situation? I still think St. Louis would like to avoid Chicago, hope that somebody can knock them off in that first round, and then take their chances with the next team in the next round if St. Louis were to advance. But there's a lot that can happen between now and then. Playoff positioning has not been decided. There are lots of teams that have started to clinch. Basically, the top three teams in both divisions have clinched. That includes the Stars, Blues, Blackhawks, Kings, Ducks, and Sharks. The Wild and Predators are pretty much solidified right now as the wild card teams. Minnesota can obviously blow that, but it doesn't seem likely the way that they've been playing here lately, so they are looking like they are going to be that final wild card team, unless they falter here in the next week or so, and Colorado picks up some points, but that's going to be incredibly difficult because I mentioned they have some incredibly difficult games. They have to play the Blues twice, they have to play Washington in there as well, and they also play against Nashville, so it's going to be hard for Colorado to get into that final playoff spot, but they have some of the talent to do it. But at this point of the season, if you haven't made that push and really gotten yourself and kept yourself in a spot like that, it doesn't seem likely that that's going to happen. What are your views on that? That is the view from the Midwest. Where do you think everybody's going to finish in the playoff race? Leave a comment in the comment section. Comment, rate, and subscribe, whether on the Bleeding Blue page or to my own YouTube page. I've got some interesting stuff going up here. Hopefully we're going to have more videos here coming out soon. But until the next time, that is the view from the Midwest. I'll see you next time.